Whoop. Okay. Well, hey, we always have technology issues here, and what better way to do it? So, welcome to this evening's episode of Communications and Cigars. I am your host, John Crooks. Sorry about the little snafu there. Um, I don't know. Maybe it was having a bad day. Maybe the computer was having a bad day. I was having a bad hair day. How about that? So, welcome to the good evening. Welcome to this episode of Communications and Cigars. I'm your host, John Crook. As always, welcome and thank you for everybody doing what do we do here at Communications and Cigars. Well, guess what? We talk a little bit about it and while enjoying a cigar. But unfortunately, it is kind of cold here. So, guess what? We are not going to go ahead and enjoy a cigar tonight because it's cold. It's getting that time of the year and everything out there. And, well, guess what? It's just kind of cold in general. So, for that, we're going to go ahead and just kind of jump into tonight's show here. First of all, I want to thank everybody that goes ahead and tunes into Communications and Cigars. We do have a great show for you planned for this evening. We do try to go live every Monday night at 8 p.m. And if not, we try to have a recorded episode. And if we can't have a go live or recorded episode, well, sorry, that happens occasionally on there. But tonight, I kind of wanted to talk about an episode. Maybe it's going to be a reference, kind of a refresher and everything out there. And it's going to be dealing with, as it says, what channel are you on? Ideas and discussions, talking about the ICS-217 form, talking a little bit about your channel layout. As the description in there, I think it's also pretty fitting and hilarious to say for the night's thing on there. You're kind of trailing off there. Are you? Did I hear a niner in there? You're calling from a walkie-talkie. So I thought, hey, that's a great little punchline to do with it. But I guess what today's thing is that we're going to talk about that, kind of some ideas and stuff. And I kind of like to do a refresher episode each year on this topic on here. And the reason I like to do a little bit of a refresher topic on there is because we're getting into the hunting season up here. And in that kind of thing, it really kind of is one of those where you really got to kind of think about what you're doing and all that jazz, because you could easily go and get into that situation where it might be, what channel we're using? Are we using the right radios? All that kind of stuff like that on there. But before we jump into it, let's go ahead and take a look. If you ever have any questions on here, communications-cigars at jjkcom.com. Once again, communications-cigars at JJK. Easiest way to go ahead and get a hold of us on there. If you have any comments, ideas, questions, all those kind of things like that on there, please feel free to reach out. Why is it at jjkcom.com? Because JJK Communications is our sponsor for Communications and Cigars. They have all this kind of good equipment. If I know how to operate it here, unlike tonight where I went along and did that kind of... The world evolves as things happen. More and more, we have more frequencies. If you are a person like me who happens to have actual multiple licenses, let's go ahead and do that kind of thing like that on there. You're going to notice there's going to be a situation where you could really have some issues when it comes to trying to communicate with people if there's a lot of stuff going on. Alrighty, meaning like multi-band radios out there, dual band radios, those kind of things like that on there. So with that being said, what I wanted to do is I wanted to touch and talk about tonight of going ahead and saying, listen, here's the deal. Here's what I want to, here's some planning that goes into it, and some planning needs to go into it. Otherwise, you could really have a tremendous issue with things. And so that's why I thought, hey, that's a good for tonight's episode. So without further ado, let's just jump into what kind of the aspect of the ICS-217 is. And then we'll kind of build off there for a little bit here. So this is the picture of the ICS-217. I'm actually going to go ahead and make it full screen here so we can actually see it here. And where are we at here? There we go. So there's the ICS-217. It is in a TC-217 format, so it is a fillable one. I got this off of the FEMA website on there. But what happens, what comes into is and I'm sure you can imagine, if you're using a radio service that is not channelized. So if you're not using MERS, if you're not using GMRS, you're not using FRS or stuff like that, or even if you possibly are, you may want to change the name. You may want to have it set up in a different mode. You may want to have it set up in a different setup. So what I'm going to go ahead and do here is we're going to talk about this 217 form. I'm going to actually show you another example of a 217 form that someone's used using this format. And then we're going to show you another one that I like, that I did some modification on, which I think works really well. So what is the concept behind the 217? So the 217A in this case here is a pretty important resource. Now, the reason it's a pretty important resource is because, and I've been on, you're going to have, in essence, the same aspect of things, but it's going to be different channels. There's going to be different setups in there. So this is where this form is going to come into great importance. But how do we take that down to a personal level? So why would it be impersonal? Why would it be important for me to have to be able to use that? Well, it's going to be important for you to have to be able to use that, because if you are going to be doing something with friends or something like that on there, or you might be doing an event, this might be a thing where you're going to have to say, you know what, here's the deal. Here's the important part of it. I want to make sure that it's getting done. It's getting done properly. It's getting done correctly. I'm able to go ahead and communicate on there. And I'll give you a personal experience. GMRS real quick. GMRS has a bunch of frequencies. We all know the GMRS channels, right? GMRS 1, 2, 3, 4, that kind of thing. But you can add the CT, CSS tones, PL tones, whatever you want to call it, DCS, DPL tones, whatever. But frequency 1 might be, with this tone, might be this repeater here, and frequency 1 with a different PL tone over here might be this other repeater. So do you call it GMRS 1, GMRS 2, well, you can't call GMRS 1 and 2 because that's a trend. Okay, how about GMRS 1A and GMRS 1B, those kind of things. Yeah, so that kind of goes ahead and does it. In addition, I think these forms actually help you, in a way, program for what you want to do. Okay, for what frequencies and what channels you want to put into where. So tonight's episode is going to be talking about that, kind of doing some hints and stuff like that on there. So frequency band. So the first part, we're going to start out here on the frequency band you see on the top here. Let's just say we're going to go ahead and do VHF. Or maybe you're going to be doing GMRS channels, okay? Whatever you want to put in the top there, name kind of what this form is going to be. If you're going to have it mixed, then maybe write mixed. Or if it's going to be just VHF, UHF, then write VHF, UHF. For people like me who are multidisciplined, it might be VHF, UHF, 700, 800. Whatever you want to do, however you're going to signify this frequency band of this chart here. Now, once again, it does not have to be all one chart. You don't have to make one for every single one. So if I have a multi-band radio, I don't have to be like, okay, I need one for VHF, and then you're going to make another one. I'm going to make one for UHF. If you want to do that, that's fine, but you don't have to do that. Now, the next one line over here is going to be, in this one here, is description, okay? And what you may do in this case is, so let's go ahead and go back here. Let's say it's going to be UHF, and then it's going to go ahead and be GMRS, FRS only, okay? So you can go ahead and do that on there, however you want to go ahead and do that. Once again, up to you. I think this is kind of a thing where it's a little bit of semantics, so it's up to you. Now, page number 1 is kind of a numbering system. If you want to break things down even further, you can go ahead and do that. It's totally up to you, but it's how you want to organize it. So that's kind of how you do it. Now, some people break this down here, and they might go ahead and they might break the page number, like the description of the channel. They might have this reference a different number in the ICS forms. It's all whatever. I actually like to use this as the numbering system on there. So I can go ahead and I can be like, okay, this is going to be channel 1. And then here I'm going to have, I'm going to click on here. This is going to be channel 2. This is going to be channel 3. This is going to be channel 4. Once again, however you want to go ahead and do that on there. Now, the channel config things on here that you can go ahead and do that. But the channel configuration on this kind of thing might be simplex, repeater. It might be, if you want to put an HF. So in that regards, you just go ahead and you say, hey, here's the deal. This is what I want to do. So channel configuration, I may put it as repeater. Okay. And when you put it as repeater, I'm going to go and go, okay. And I like to do it this way. I like to do this as RPT. So now I know, okay, the channel configuration is going to be repeater. So now I know it's going to be a repeater channel. Now I'm going to look in here. Now notice here, it goes ahead and says channel name, trunk radio system, talk group, that kind of thing on there. So in this case, if the channel name was going to be, it was going to be a GMRS channel, but I know it's a GMRS channel, so I don't want to take up the name of that. Let's say I might put it as, you know, Baldwin 1. Let's say. That's what I'm going to call the channel. That's my name when I want to call the channel. It's not a big deal. I can call whatever I want. Now, who's going to be the eligible user in this case? GMRS users on there. And then in that case, maybe it's going to go ahead and be 462.700. Alrighty. That's the receive frequency. Now, in addition to that, what you want to do is you want to put it as a narrow or wideband channel. And the reason you want to put narrow wideband channel is because you want to know, well, actually, let me back up even more. When entering the frequency, it's always a good suggestion to put 4 places after the decimal. And the reason being is if you get splinter frequencies on there. So maybe it's 700 here, but maybe it's going to, the next one's going to be 5625 or 2425 or something like that on there. Now, the N or the W, if we go down here, it's going to go ahead and saying N or W on the bottom, depending on if the frequency is wide or narrow band. So in this case, it's going to be narrow band, let's say. So narrow band on there. Okay. I'm just throwing things together. It doesn't have to be. If you want, you can make a wide band, whatever on there. 9 times out of 10, what ends up happening is that when you start getting a certain frequencies, like let's say, for example, I was going to make this an amateur frequency. Let's say I was just going to go ahead and use 146. I'll use my repeater because I put it as a repeater. So 147255. Okay. Okay. 147255. Well, it's amateur. I know amateur is wideband. I'm not going to put W after there. What this comes down to is that when you start getting into public safety frequencies, that maybe some might be wideband, some might be narrow band, whatever the case may be, that's when you go ahead and think about it. So in this case, we're going to go back to 462.7000, okay? Now, I'm not going to go ahead and I'm not going to put wide or narrow band. I know there. Now, let's say I was going to use a tone. So let's say I'm going to use the travel tone. Now, this tone here can be a PL tone. It can be a DCS tone. But if you are putting a DCS tone, it is always recommended and suggested you put the N behind it. The N means normal, or an I in a DCS tone would mean inverted. Now, inverted and normal tones, that might be a little episode we can get into that, but we did one on that called signaling. But you really want to do that because if you just put D023, well, I know it's a DPL tone of 023, but I don't know if it's inverted or if it's normal. So like D023, so DPL 023 normal is the same as, or would be heard by a radio doing D047 inverted. So that's why I always say put that on there. Now, if, as you notice, it says NAC up there. NAC is for P25, and this ICS form is really designed for FEMA stuff where they're using analog or digital, and usually you're going to do one or the other, but you may have a mixed mode channel. So in that case, let's say I was going to use the tone 141.3, but then I'm also going to use the NAC code of, let's say, 293. So if I put 293 there, that may seem a little confusing. And the reason I say it's confusing because it's like, okay, wait a minute. I know there's not a PL tone of 293, but is that a DCS tone? What exactly is that on there? So a suggestion is to put a $sign and put 293. That $sign would represent, hey, this is a NAC code of 293. But since there's no digital in GMRS, we're just going to leave it as 141.3. Now we're going to come over here and we're going to go ahead and enter the transmit frequency. Now in this case, GMRS is 5 megahertz up. So transmit is going to be 467.700. Alrighty. Same thing with the tone. This time, let's say the tone is DCF 411. And I'm going to put an N on there. Now, that's your transmit tone. Same thing. If you're going to have a transmit tone on there that's digital, make sure you put it in the proper way. Now, here's the catch-22. Transmit is usually a fixed mode. So you want to go ahead and make sure that the transmit tone is that. So you're not usually going to have this need of D411N because, oh, it's going to be that. No, and then we're going to go ahead and, oh, have a there it's 293. No, you're not going to do that. What you would want to do is if you are going to have a digital versus analog channel, we'll get to that in a minute, you are going to want to enter twice on here. Now, mode, once again, this comes down to digital. So A is for analog, so I could put A, that means it's an analog channel. D means it's digital, M means it's mixed mode. This does not necessarily correlate to what is transmit versus receive. Sometimes some people will do a mix, so they'll say M for mixed mode if it's mixed mode received, and then they might put /D or /A to signify if it is transmit, analog, or digital. Then finally, we're going to do remarks here, okay? And remarks are short little kind of what it's used for, what it might be, and local residents, I'll put local res GMRS repeater. So now I could be like, okay, why is that one important? Well, it's my local to my residents. You can put whatever note you want to in there. Okay, GMRS, that kind of thing like that on there. Whatever, however that works out for you. So this is the ICS-217 form. I just did this one once again here for GMRS. But there's more to this form. There's more that you can do. And we're going to take, and now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to highlight all these. I'm going to actually start deleting it here. So I'm going to do this here. I'm going to delete. Let's take a look at it from like a user standpoint of frequencies and stuff like that, okay? So I'm going to delete this all out here. It sucks because you got to delete it like one by one. There's not like a exact specific like way to do it all. Okay, so channel configuration. So channel configuration, I'm still going to use like RPT, or I might do simplex. Oh, if I can erase, I might do simplex, or I might do car to car. We'll just do car to car because of space. Whatever the configuration might be, whatever term you're going to use. In this case, I'm going to use a repeater. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and call it, we're going to call this TAC 1. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put it as TAC 1D. Let's call it D. And I'll show you why I'm going to call it D in a moment. So eligible users. Now, if I was laying this out for an event, if I was laying this out, there might be frequencies which are going to be law enforcement only, fire only, EMS only, DPW only, might be event staff only, those kind of things like that. So you really want to list out the eligible users. Like we just did with this GMRS example, we really kind of want to maybe do that same thing on there with the users on there. It's just going to make it much simpler, much easier for you. Okay. So I listed as eligible users all on there. And then what I did here in this case is now let's say this is going to be a business channel. Okay. So we're going to program this as business channel. So let's say it's 151.5250. I don't know if that's a business channel or not. I'm using it as an example, folks. Just using an example, okay? So now it's 151.5250. In this case, it's going to be narrowband. And the reason it's going to be narrowband is because it's going to be digital. Now, with this, I'm also going to have an analog channel. So analog users can use it. So in this case, I'm going to use the tone 203.5. But then I'm also going to be using a a NAC of 100. So now as you see here on my channel, such it was set up, I have 203.5 and I have a NAC of 100. What this means tells me here right now is when I'm looking at programming this, oh, okay, this is going to be an analog and digital channel. Now let's say the program is going to go ahead and be 158.925 and it's going to be digital on there. Well, here, let's change it to 158.400. How about that? That's a good user frequency, right? Now, because I named this D, TAC D, I want it to be, or TAC 1D, that's going to go ahead and mean digital on me. So in this case, I would go ahead and put in 100 because that's going to be my NAC code. Here we are, analog, digital, or mixed mode. Well, I want it to be mixed mode. So in this case, I would put M/D. So now looking at that, or I can go ahead, if the writing is too small, I can go ahead and do M-D. However you want to do it, that's fine. And we're going to write in here primary channel for ops. Okay. Now, let's say I have it that's going to be analog users if we need to. So now I'm going to put RPT again. I'm going to copy this, but now we're going to call this TAC1A. Now, TAC1A is going to mean analog in this case. So I'm going to put all users again. I'm going to copy the same frequency down, 151.5250N. And now what I'm going to do is the same thing. If I have a digital capable radio, I'm going to do that because I want to be able to hear that. And then I'm going to go ahead and do 158.4000 again, and that's going to be N. But here's where I'm going to change it. This is going to be different. Since it's going to be an analog channel, for transmit, I need to do a PL tone. Now I'm going to go M-A, and then once again, maybe I'm going to write primary channel for ops. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and make a little room there. I'm going to put FM, okay? So I'm going to shorten this one here too, so I'm not there. So prim CH for ops, and then I'm going to go ahead and put dig. So now I know it's digital. Okay. This sheet is all well and good. Okay. And a good usage of this is going to be in these commercialized settings, these kind of things like that on there. Another good example, I'll go ahead and do it, is this one here. Let me back up here a little bit. Let me clear all this out here. Is when you have multiple agencies. And this is where I really like this form, okay? I have some problems with this form. I'll show you how other people used it, but here we go. So, in Wisconsin, where I'm at, we used to have this frequency called Whispern. And Whispern was very much like the other frequency called Ispern for people in Illinois. So what we did is that let's call this a direct channel, okay, in this case. And I'm going to call this Whispern. Whispern. Stood for Wisconsin State Patrol Emergency Radio Net. Eligible users were law enforcement in this case. And this is going to be 155.4750 narrowband. And it had no tone. 155.4750 narrowband. And it didn't have any tone either. It was an analog channel, and then for Wisconsin users. Now, I go along and we have, let's say we're on the border of Illinois and Wisconsin. Now, I need to know, and if I was to do COM-L, COM-T, something like that, I'm laying this out, I need to go ahead and figure out, well, wait a minute here, we have Whispern, so how can I do this? How can I use this form? Well, now we're going to call it Ispern, and guess what? Law enforcement, and guess what the frequency is? 155.4750 normal tone, 155.4750 normal tone, and then, or narrow tone band, I should say, now for Illinois users. Now, guess what? People who are on in Wisconsin or Illinois are coming to help, like the feds or something, they don't call that. They call this VLAW 31. So now what I'm going to have to do is call VLAW 31. It's going to be law enforcement. Guess what the frequency is? Well, I'll be darned. 155.4750 narrow. They used a tone of 156.7, 155.4750 narrow, and they used a tone of 156.7, and then all users, and for, we'll call this national users, okay? Now, here's where this form comes into play. Because it's a common name, because it's a common frequency, because it's this kind of thing like that on there, now I can use this as a repository. I can use this and go on saying, okay, wait a minute here. We got people who are coming in from Wisconsin. They're going to go ahead and be Whispern users. There's people in Illinois, they call it Whispern users, and VLAW 31 for the feds. Guess what? It's all the same frequencies. The only thing I need to know is that, guess what? They have a tone on there. They may need to take that tone off. Okay? They may need to. All right? Another good example. So now I'm going to go down, and now I'm going to call it a direct channel. Okay? Now here's what I'm going to call it. Some people used to call it a hear channel. Okay? And what that was is that was an EMS channel, but a lot of people know it as this 155.3400. Okay. Now, people may have used a tone. Let's say they used a tone of 103.5 for argument's sake, right? But now here's what I know: 103.5 analog users, and we'll call this Wisconsin users again. But now, guess what? Feds are coming into play. They don't call that here. They call it VMed 28. And now it's going to be EMS. And once again, same frequency here. And they use a tone of 156.7. So now what I'm doing is I'm classifying frequencies together and then national users. So now I'm able to group these frequencies together. This is what this form is great for. Now, the reason I said I don't like this form is because if you're on a trunked radio system talk group, there's no place to put the talk group number in here. There isn't. So now we have a problem. Now on this form, what do? Well, the intent is to go ahead and say that it is all the same frequency. Okay? So if we were to go back here, and I'm going to go ahead and delete this, and let's just say P25 trunked is what it is, okay? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the name, and I'm going to call this Law TAC 1, okay? And then your law enforcement users, well, some people may put the receive frequency in here, but they may not. And they may, so because it's a frequency. So some people may put the talk group in there, which is okay, but a lot of people are going to say, well, no. I know it's a P25 trunked, and I know it's Law TAC 1. It's going to be law enforcement, so let's just call it the county system, okay? And then they'll put the county system in there because, on the county system we know Law TAC 1. We're not going to put the talk group on here, and then they would just go ahead and delete this out, or they may change this to D, and then they may whatever remarks they want in there. Yeah, that's great, but now let's expand this out where if we have strategic partners that are using DMR, that are using NextEn, that are using an analog trunk system, that's where this is going to become quite problematic. So now what we have to take a look at is we're like, how do we overcome this issue? And the way we overcome this issue really is going to be in regards to saying, I need to figure this out. How can I figure this out? Well, yeah, there's certain things to do it, and I'm going to now show you here. Let me pull up on the other screen here. I'm going to go back to the screen. I'm going to go ahead and show you how. I believe this is out of Illinois, Lake County, DuPage. Yeah, it's Illinois here. So let me go ahead and show you this here. So look how they did. They took this ICS-217 and they cleaned it up. They did a nice job here. So channel configuration, look what they did here. They listed it as if it's lower sideband, packet, simplex, repeated. So great thing on there. Then what they did is they gave like the channel name 80 meter single sideband. They're not listing the frequency here because they're listing this frequency already here. So there's no need to duplicate that effort. But then they're going to go ahead and list it for, lower sideband here, packet. They gave the frequency. And look what they did here, though, too, is they added a kind of a column to clean it up dramatically here. So now instead of putting the W or the N right afterwards, they went along and they added sort of a little column in there. Really great usage of it. Not a bad idea. Same thing here. They did analog. They did digital on there. So they did a lot of kind of interesting stuff on there. If you noticed in here, they also went along and they added some notes on there. Okay, there's a voice net and there's a digital net on there. Okay. But once again, one of the things on there is they listed a packet radio and they said, okay, that's digital. But if they were to use a mode in amateur, because if you notice this is all amateur stuff here, if they were to use a mode, so like if they used D-Star, well, D-Star is not a good example, but if they used Fusion, for an example, or let's say they used DMR, let's say they used something on there, how do you take into consideration those frequencies? And that's a big question that you just have to figure out there. So once again, taking a look at that, you got to kind of say like, what do we do here? How do we do this? How do we slice this? So what I did was I went along and I said, you know what? I want to be able to do some things. And what I did was I came up with, and I'm pulling up on my other screen here, I really wanted to kind of hone in on that aspect of things. So what I did was I kind of came up with my own form. And I know everybody says, "Oh, John, you're not supposed to come up with your own form and everything like that." No, but I did. And the reason I did is because we have an interesting thing that happens. In the amateur, not even in the amateur, but like public safety, business, all those kind of things like that, we have all these different enigmas that happen, right? Not everybody has the same radio, okay? People may have the same band, but not everybody's going to go ahead and have the same radio, right? I may have my E.F. Johnson Kenwood radio. Someone may have a Motorola radio. Someone may have whatever radio. And that's just within like maybe a certain type of band. Alrighty. But what happens when you start to get radios that are not the same? What happens if you start to, like in amateur world, you have Yaesu radios versus Kenwood radios versus Icom radios versus Baofangs versus, anyways, Anytones versus Motorola. I mean, it gets all over the board. So I adopted this form here. And this form is kind of a little bit of a form. I like it. So first of all, what I have is I have this open box here. This allows me to kind of write what it is. So I can put in here amateur bank, okay, or amateur zone, or I could have amateur zone VHF local. Whatever I want to put in there, I can put that in there. Now the next column over here is going to be personality. Okay. Now the personality comes into, if you've ever programmed business radios, they have personalities, or they have systems that you have to create depending on what it is. Alrighty. So what I usually do in this personality or this system here, I might have a personality set up as amateur. Okay. Now what's going to happen, if I can stop typing so fast. Now what's happening in this case, I know that it's my amateur personality. So if I'm using DMR, I have an amateur DMR ID versus my public safety DMR ID versus my business DMR ID. So the personality I would know to select is that one there. The date, pretty simple, straightforward. The date is October of 2023. And the zone name is what I want to come up with it. So I will keep my zone names kind of tight. I don't really like to go over 6 to 8 letters if I can afford it. In addition, I like to do sequential stuff with my zones. So if I have a bunch of public safety zones, okay, I may tend to, and if you look across the bottom here, I'll kind of do that for you here. If you look across the bottom here, like my main zone for public safety is A, like all the ones. So it's like certain public safety ones start with a number dashed at, and then certain ones start with a letter. And the reason I have those is because those are going to be indicative of where I'm going to be using that on there. Some of the frequencies may overlap, but if I'm using it for this purpose, like I'm on duty in this county, or I'm on duty in another county, or I have another county stuff in there, I might go ahead and change that up. And the zone names could be simple. So I might put it as ham VHF on there, something simple like that. Or I might put it as AM VHF A/D. So it lets me know amateur VHF frequencies, analog and digital, however it needs to be. Now this is where it's going to come into critical on how we do it. And what I mean by that is that some people have banks on their radios or zones, some people don't on there. But what I can do here is I can put that zone or bank number in there. So let's say I wanted to do it as zone A1, because I know it's amateur and it's my first amateur zone. Or maybe I'm going to do amateur and it's VHF. So I could put AV, and then I could do it AV, AV, AV. So now I know what zone it's going to go ahead and be in. Okay. Now, the position can also be known as the channel number. Okay. So on my dial here, okay, so for an example, on my dial here, I have, and it's kind of hard to see, but I have a 16 channel selector. That means I only have 16 channels per zone in this radio here. Alrighty. So what I'm going to normalize with my radio on here is I would be more likely to go ahead and saying, okay, zone AV for amateur VHF, but channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is going to be there. And there's going to be a reason to this method to the madness in a minute. So I'm going to do AV, and I'm just going to put a few in there for right now. Now I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, channel name. Channel name is critical. Channel name is critical in the sense of you want to make sure it is easy to do and easy to use. Alrighty? Come up with common channel names. Now, where I live, one of the things that we were working on as the amateur group is we started to look at and we started to do counties because we were listed as counties. So I live in St. Croix County, so our nomenclature was SC. So anytime I had something that was SC, I knew it was St. Croix County. The next county to the south of us is Pierce County, so that would be PC County. The next county to the east of us was Dunn. They were DU, okay? The one to the north of us was actually Polk, so they were PO, okay? So we kind of did it that way. That doesn't have to be that way. But the reason I say keep it to 6, 8 at the most, is because not all radios have 12 characters can do that kind of thing like that. So I may go ahead and put this as my county, so SC, and I might say this is Baldwin, so I might put it as BLD. So now I'm up to 5 characters. If I'm doing 6, I have 1 more character. If I'm doing 8, I have 3 more characters. Okay? It's you. It's how you want to set it up. But I suggest going ahead and having it as a common number or name on there. So, for an example, if this is all going to be in St. Croix County, I may do BLD, and then I might be VHF 1, okay, or VHF here 1, okay? So BALD, B-A-L-D, that's 4, VHF 1, that's another 4, that gives me my 8, alrighty? That's just kind of how to do the name of there. Whatever it is, stay consistent in your naming, because if I go ahead and create this channel and I pass it out to everybody, the unique part about this is, as long as I'm in that zone, right? And whether I have an E.F. Johnson, a Kenwood, a Motorola, Anytone, a Kirasun, whatever, guess what? If I'm in zone, and by the way, zones don't have to be letters either. They can be all numbers. But if I know that I'm in zone 1, channel 1 on my E.F. Johnson radio, that if I'm on zone 1, channel 1 of the Kirasun radio, that they're going to be the same. And if the names are the same, it's easy for me to do. I don't need to know how to operate that radio. I don't need to know what all the buttons on the front of the radio do. I need to know that the push to talk button works, and I need to know that if everybody tells me to go to zone 1, channel 5, I turn zone 1, channel 5, and if zone 1, channel 5 was TAC 5, then guess what? I know that, hey, God, I don't know how to operate this radio. Channel 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hey, it says TAC 5 on there. Brr, I'm going to talk on TAC 5 with the other ones. Okay. Now, what I did on mine is that, once again, came up with the name. So we'll call it Bald VHF. Whatever I want to do. I made a couple branches out here. So what I did was I made a branch out of receive frequency, but then I put receive PL or DPL. Then I put a receive NAC or color code, or I could put RAN if I'm using Next Edge. Now I take the transmit frequency. I have TXPL DPL. I have the NAC and color code, and then I have, if I needed to, on there I could change it up. Now notice I had these 3, receive, PL, and NAC. So what I can do is I could fill it out, and based on if I have a receive PL or DPL, if I have a receive NAC color code, whatever the case may be, I know, I can tell if it's digital or analog. Same thing here. This is where it's going to get interesting. Now, this is going to be the talk group that I would need to use, because P25, DMR, and NextEn use talk groups. Okay. Time slot is if I'm using DMR. So watch how we're going to do this. So let's say I'm doing public safety frequencies. Alrighty, or business frequencies. So we're going to go back to that 151.5250. Now, I don't have a N or a W on there because guess what? I know if it's amateur, it's going to be wide. I know if it's anything else, it's going to be narrow, right? So here's where we go. And let me actually call this up here. So we'll do this as bald, and we're going to call this FM. Okay. So now it's going to be a repeater frequency. So let's say we're using 203.5. Now, I'm going to leave this blank unless I'm going to have it as a mixed mode channel. Now, here's the thing. Some radios can do mixed mode. Some radios cannot do mixed mode. So in this case, let's say I can do P25 on it also. So I'm going to do the $sign, and I'm going to do 293. Okay? That tells me that $sign is 293. That tells me that's the receive of that P25. What if it's a color code? Thanks for asking. I'm going to do CC, and then I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, because you can go all the way up to 15. Okay? So now what I can take a look at, if I have $sign 293, I'm going to go to transmit frequency. Let's say that transmit frequency is 154.4000 or 158.4000. This time, I'm going to go ahead and have it, because it's bald FM, I'm going to go ahead and do there. Now, if it was mixed mode, which it is, I need to put a talk group. The other form had no room for a talk group. This does. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter the talk group, but notice the talk group is in decimal. That's what the DEC says. Not hex, but decimal. That's where people screw themselves on a lot. So let's say I'm going to use talk group 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. Just for argument's sake, over there. Okay? Time slot, I don't need to do it. Okay? Now I'm going to go here. I'm going to do the same thing. So as you see, filling out the same thing over there. But now here's where we're going to go different. Now, so I'm using that. I'm still using talk group 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? But we're going to get to this all in a moment here. Are you going to experience anything in the world that has multi-modes like that? Amateur, you might, but not in a business world, right? They don't make... Well, I guess they do make... I take that back. Kenwood does make it. I should have known better. So now we're going to go CC1, and we're going to use talk group 1, 2, 3... Let's just make it a little different here. Let's go 777. And then now, my time slot. So now let's break down this here. So let's eliminate these names here. I'm just going to eliminate, and we can tell what it is here. So let's look at the frequencies. Okay, they're all the same frequency. We know it's VHF. Okay, we all know they're received, so we know we're going to have some analog format on there. But now let's take a look at it. Wow, we have, in addition to the analog tones, we have NAC codes and color codes. Well, okay, let's look further, see what that is. Now we see the transmit frequency the same. Now, aha, this is this whole area where we're going to get different. So now top line 2035, nothing in NAC, but I do have a talk group. But because there's nothing in this TX NAC or the TX color code, I know it's going to be transmitting analog because it has that there, right? Okay, now I know what my talk group is. 1, 2, 3, 4. I can make this assumption that channel 1 is an FM or mixed mode receive, FM transmit, but it's going to be using P25. Let's go to the second one. Same thing. Okay, 151, 525, 2035, 293, NAC code, 158.400 or 4000. Oh, no PL tone. 293 talk group. Aha. Now I know it's a P25 talk group. Alrighty. Now, finally, here we go on here. We're going to go ahead and take a look at this. Now we're looking at this. Okay, 151, 525, 2035, CC. Aha. Now I know that it is a color code that is going to be DMR. Now I'm looking at this again. Now what I'm looking at is transmit is going to be color code 1. Now I'm looking at the talk group of 777, and now I see a time slot because it's DMR. Aha, time slot 1. Now let's add one more into the mix, and if you're watching this, tell me if you could see what's going on here with this one. What other one am I going to be making here? Whoop. Would help if I could type 2, and then we're going to do 555. Okay, so which one did I just make now? Well, aha. 151, 520, okay. there's a PL tone, so it's probably going to be FM. Oh, there's also a received digital tone, RAN 2. RAN is next N. Okay, transmit, RAN tone. Talk group 555, no time slot. Voila. Now I just did that. Now let's go ahead and break it down even to make it a little easier. We're going to clear this out here. So now what we can say? Well, we could say, hey, this one here is FM only. This one here is P25 only. This one here is going to be DMR only. And then this one here is going to go ahead and be next N. But here's where it gets into nice in the notes. Here we can go ahead and we can go FM. This is going to be P25. This is going to be DMR. And this is going to go ahead and be next N. Guess what? You could do that. That's how I kind of improved on this form, because then what happens is that, once again, we had no talk groups or time slots listed on that other form. If I wanted to go ahead and say, and I wanted to make this a mixed mode, right? So 293 on here, and then again, talk group 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I could do mixed FMTX. Whoop. There we go. So now I know, hey, this is mixed FMTX. Now I can go ahead and do mixed P25TX. Voila. And same thing here. Mixed DMR-TX. Okay? I can add that on there. And it makes things easier on there to do that. Now, as we were talking about the GMRS and everything like that on here, look what I kind of did here with mine. Okay? I put these GMRS repeaters, and I kind of put them all into here. Now, if you take a look at it, look what I did here. So I put GMRS 550. I put that in there, but I'm not using any receives. I want this carrier squelch so I can hear what's going on, but I just have a transmit tone of 67 hertz only. Nothing in here. Look what I did. Restricted to 50 watts repeater split. Okay. 575 did the same thing. Restricted to 50 watts repeater slit. Okay. Or split. Now look what I did for FRS up here. FRS in my mobile, I can do that. I can change it. Hey, because I'm a GMRS license holder, I can go ahead and do that on there. And when I'm doing that aspect of things, guess what's happening in that case? Now I'm able to go ahead and saying, hey, because I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. I know what the settings are. If I want to go back and take a look here at my FRS stuff, look what I did for my FRS stuff. I listed it all there, but now look what I did. Because I'm a GMRS operator, I can use 5 watts on there, but then I'm restricted to half a watt on 8 through 14. So this is where you can kind of really go ahead and kind of keep that up on there. Let me go ahead and do another thing on here. Okay, mutual aid channels. Not afraid to show down. Mutual aid or mutual aid channels here. Well, let's get you a better one here. Wisconsin mutual aid channels. So here's how the new mutual aid channels are on there. But as you see, look at it. Now I have this listing of all these channels. So mark 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's what we have in Wisconsin. We have the EMS A, B, and C, which guess what? Is a nationwide channels on there. Now I have iFern, iFern 2. We have Fireground Red, Blue, stuff like that, because in Wisconsin we have Firegrounds. But watch what ends up happening here. So notice how we have our tones here, and then we have our transmit tones. Look at our state tones are different than here. But look at it. VMED 28, VMED 29. Those are those same frequencies there. You see what I'm saying? So this list gives you more of an opportunity to say, hey, here's the deal. Here's what I want to go ahead and have set up on there. Once again, it's just mine on there. And then when we get to that channel name, kind of circling back to that we talked about, I may call this RPT FM. This may be RPT P25. And this may be RPT DMR. Okay? However you want to have that on there. It really doesn't make a difference. One of the things that some have used and moved to is if you're going to be doing this, you may change the frequency names and stuff like that to color codes, or you color it in a certain way. So for an example, if I was going to do FM, I might have FM as red. So I might change this as red RPT. And this might be yellow, because I do yellow as P25. And this might be blue, because I do DMR is blue. Oh, excuse me. I haven't screwed up there. Yellow RPT, then I might be blue RPT, and then I might be green RPT. So to me, I know that red, oh, that's FM. Yellow is P25. I know that blue is a DMR, and green might be NextEd. So you kind of see how this layout goes. Regardless, if I hand a person a radio, if the radios are the same, if the radios are compatible, they're going to go ahead and be the same. So that's kind of these little hints and kind of what I wanted to talk to people about in regards to kind of tonight's episode, because I think this is really, really important thing on there that people need to know. And I think people really need to plan it. But then we come to that part of the show. You know what really bends my antenna? When we start to talk about frequencies and stuff like that on there, that everybody wants to have a little made up name and everything like that on there. I think it's important as a group that you sit down and you come up with standard nomenclature. Now you're probably saying, John, well, you just called the color codes and everything like that on there. Yeah, I did. But here's the reason why. If you have a system that's going to have multiple frequencies, multiple bands, or multiple something on there, and you may have people that are going to require two separate radios because they don't have dual band capable radios or something on there, you have to take in that count and take in that consideration. Okay? If, for an example, I have a dual band radio and I have the ability to have VHF and UHF, and it is a multi-band radio, and I'll give you an example. My EF Johnson VP8000, it is A, multi-band. It is B, multi-mode. Okay? I can do VHF, UHF, 700, 800 in there. I can do FM. I could do P25. I could do DMR in there. Okay? I have to break that down in some things. My one radio, in essence, has the possibility to replace 3 to 4 other different radios on there. We don't all have dual band radios. We don't all have multi-protocol radios. We don't all have that. But here's what you can do when you come to this kind of thought process. That thought process says, you know what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, if you lay out your channels and here, and if you have a zone and the zone is red, for an example, we know a red V, okay, for an example, I know that is red and I know it's VHF channels. If I have a red U zone, then I know it's FM, okay, and I know it's UHF channels. If I have, let's say P25 is yellow, like we gave an example. If I have a P25V or a yellow V and I have a yellow U, guess what? I know the yellow is P25 VHF and the yellow U is P25 UHF. Blue, so on and so forth. That can help eliminate things a lot together, because now if I have a situation where we're on scene, okay, and not everybody knows the capabilities of a radio, right? People who don't use radios and stuff like that on there may not know that a Motorola HT1250 is analog only, but a Kenwood NX5000 series radios could be VHF or it could be UHF, and it could be 1, 2, 3 different modes on there, right? So that's where a good naming process takes into play. It really is something those sit down and do with it. I know people say use normal channels, use normal channel names, and the amateur community, you know, will say use the frequencies. I hear all that all the time. But when you have a fleet, when you have a mitigation of something, two things are going to come down to radio usage. One, it's going to come down to muscle memory. That's what it's going to go ahead and come down to. Two is going to come down with comfortableness, the aspect of, hey, I'm comfortable using this radio. I can take this radio and I know how to change channels. I know how to change zones. I know how to use the radio. Muscle memory is going to be that normal day-to-day zone. When you get into these high-stress situations, when you get into special events, that's not the time to go and saying, wait a minute here, I need to, okay, zone, no, okay, no, oh, switch, okay, a switch, A, B, C switch, okay, no, that's not the time to do it. That's the time to go ahead and saying, okay, everybody, if I need to know how to change zones and I know my channel number, I can say everybody needs to go to zone 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, channel 7. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Aha, zone 5, channel 7. Radio check, radio check, radio check, radio check. When we're going ahead and being, okay, everybody, we're going to go ahead and be using the Baldwin VHF repeater in FM. Okay, well, you know what? People who don't live in my county, don't live near here, they may not have that in their radio at all in their first zone or bank, or maybe it might be channel number 111. Who knows? The biggest thing to help is to become standardized, is to become somewhat channelized. I know this is a big thing that people will go ahead and say, nah, 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 John. No, we can't do that. But actually, yes, we can. We can to a degree. And by having that come to that degree, that does it. I don't think it's a worry about channels either. I don't know really of any radios that this day, even amateur radios, have less than 199 channels, okay? Most of them have at least 199 channels. You'll probably be able to fit some stuff in there. Now, does that mean some people will say I need to have every channel in the world on there? No, you can't come up with that many channel combinations. But if you know that area, go ahead and think about how you're laying your channels out here and think about how that nomenclature is. Because I'll tell you what, when you're on the scene, when you're coming into this, when you're doing the event, now's not the time to be breaking out the manual. Now's not the time to reprogram the radio. And now's not the time to think, okay, wait, we're going to call this channel. Okay, we're going to call this channel this number. Okay, that kind of thing like that. That is how you need to go ahead and do it. And that is for this week's, you know what really bends my antenna? And that's for this week's episode of Communications Cigars. I want to say thank you to everybody that tuned into Communications Cigars. I do appreciate it. I really like dealing with this. This is an MCOM thing. Everybody knows who I am, knows that I'm an MCOM thing on there. I do appreciate it. I hope to see some comments about how people use stuff with their groups and stuff like that. We all learn off of one another, so don't think that my way is the only way. It's the way that we see best on here. But hey, maybe there's something, a page from someone else's book that I can take and use it in my own life and go from there. So until then, everybody, if you have them, enjoy them, stay safe, take care. And the weather's getting cooler up here. Once again, it's that nice time of the year, for me at least, it's fall season. But until then, relax, take care, see everybody, God bless.